What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's trade recap. I took a single trade today, and it was a break even trade. And there was another setup that I did not take because I wasn't fully convinced by it. I also interpreted this as like this area up here. I'll mark it out really quick so you know what I'm talking about. Like this area up here where we failed to break higher, like we were struggling at the highs. At least that's what it looked like to me on Bookmap. I interpreted that as a lot of failed buying, like a lot of buying effort, not really any follow through. CVD steadily holding up, and we were like not really, you know, pushing higher. So I'm like, and then I saw the aggressive selling come in into the confluences that I have marked out here on my chart. You can clearly see I had a low volume node, and this is not really based on the chart here. It's more based on what I was seeing on Bookmap and the 618, and very close to overnight VWAP. Pretty much perfect entry if you took it. I feel like it's a very valid entry for anyone to take. Me personally, I didn't take it. Maybe it was influenced by the fact that I had already taken a break even trade and I didn't get my TP. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But yeah, I'll go over kind of my thought process for today's price action. And before the open, I told myself, I am bullish. Um, I said previous day's range stat was neutral since yesterday's candle, so today would be Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I had a loss of, uh, I guess, lost track of time. But anyways, um, that would mean Monday's candle broke both the low and high of Friday's candle, meaning the previous range stat isn't really giving me anything. I didn't mark out through the open. I think it was not swept in London. No, actually, it was. It was traded through in London, so you could consider it as irrelevant. Pre-market didn't trade towards it, so maybe you did hold some relevance for you. Me personally, I didn't mark it out. I think I just kind of woke up a bit late. Uh, Not like too late, but not as early as I would like to. But anyways, I said price ended up respecting the bullish daily fair value gap, and is at the upper end of the resistance zone. Um, so what that looks like is basically if you kind of zoom out a little bit, this resistance zone, which is this big red box over here, it's held a few times now. This is actually like a shortened version because it's actually like lower, but it held here. I think this one was another time that it held because the resistance zone actually goes like all the way like down here or something like that. But I decided to mark it out like this, and we were like, yesterday close inside of it, and then we were kind of just trading above it, and it looked to me like we were accepting value above previous week's value area high. So it looked bullish to me. It looked like, okay, we're truly respecting this daily fair value gap, and I'll show you what that looks like on the daily chart. So this fair value gap right here, you could also see it as like a break and retest of this high right here. We broke above it with strength, retested it, retested these highs, retested like the 300s, 310s to maybe like 200s. Retested that pretty nicely. So yeah, support zone right there. Maybe this is your target for the upcoming days. And that's actually a target that I have marked out. That was like the ideal target for the day. Um, but yeah, looking at it here, this might be a pretty good target. I'm not sure if I have marked out. Well, I don't actually, but I actually have a high over here. But yeah, anyways, that was pretty much what I was looking at. Um, I think I had like a volume profile for the session and then just all time highs volume profile. Kind of wanted to have an idea. It also looked like we were holding the POC from all time highs. Um, I think on the 3 minute it ended up looking like it shifted higher or something like that. But yeah, it looked good to me for longs. I did want to see like maybe a retrace into this 1 hour for value gap, 15-minute intermediate low, this low volume node that I noticed on Bookmap. I decided to mark it out on my chart. I had like the time to do that as well. Um, but yeah, pretty small area. It's like what 4 points, 5 points, 4 points and 3 ticks. It's nothing. Very small area, but if we tested it and like got a strong reaction, I would probably be pretty quick at looking for longs there since it's a low volume node and I'm expecting it to hold with a lot of strength. But yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at pre-market. I also marked out a couple 1 hour fair value gaps because I wanted to have like an area to long off of. If we like end up selling off at open or something like that. I also marked out London low. And I'm like, okay, if we trade towards London low, I feel like it might be tricky, but I could expect a sweep of those lows. If we find buyers there, then good look for longs, maybe towards this unfilled 1 hour that I had over here and these relative equal highs and 1 hour intermediate high. But off open, we actually ended up displacing with a lot of strength. And then on the 3 minute, I think I was looking at it on the 5 minute. No, I think it was the 3 minute actually. Um, we had a low volume node form on the on Bookmap, and this is what my entry looked like at the time. I marked out a couple of low volume nodes as we pushed above uh, my confluences, like well, not really my confluences, but you could see like we clearly are accepting value above this resistance zone. We retested it off open, pushed higher, and then we created a couple low volume nodes. And the first one started aligning with New York VWAP. I did notice we had a passive buyer here. So I'm like, okay, this could be an entry point, but I'm like, I'm not convinced by this. I want a deeper retracement, maybe to the VWAP, maybe a 382, right? We ended up getting it towards VWAP. I don't think we tapped into a 382, but if you look at kind of like just a fib of the current New York range at that time, the 382 was at like 558.75. I don't think we actually tapped into it, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not entirely sure what the candle was for my entry. It ended up being somewhere over here. It's just a 3 minute. Yeah, so after the sell off candle. So no entry just yet. Then we get a tap into VWAP. Not quite the 382. It doesn't quite get to it. If you think of it in terms of like an area, you're like, okay, yeah, it's close enough to the 382. So I ended up entering, I think, during the formation of this candle. I can't remember exactly what my entry was. I'll look into it here in a second. But this was what my entry looked like. Just, copying these numbers, 578.50. 578.50, so I actually ended up getting a better entry than the candle close on the 3 minute. And then after that, my TP was 660.50. My stop loss was 538.50, which was just basically the low of this candle, which is you could consider as a breakout candle. You could consider like the candle before that a breakaway gap if you're familiar with ICT terms. That's something that I thought about in the moment. I'm like, you know what, I don't really want to see price retrace all the way down to that. It could be a possibility, right? It aligns with the 0.5, the 618, but at the time I didn't want to see that since we were trading into a low volume node and we were retesting VWAP. And to me, this looked like a clean retest. If you zoom in, right, what do we see here? The CVD has significantly decreased, right? You can clearly see we had a sell off, right? It shows with the bubbles, it shows with the CVD. Like clearly there's sellers present here. And once we get to that VWAP, we get a lot of selling. 3 attempts to break it. Couldn't break it. 3 selling attempts. Our CVD is lower, not making lower lows. You could consider this like an internal CVD divergence. So I enter there, and my TP was at 660.50, mainly because it was 2R, 2.05, so like to cover like commissions and fees and all that good stuff. Um, this ended up looking good. Looked good for a little bit. Looked really good there. I was thinking about, we've reached into this 1 hour FVG. It's, a 1 to 1.27. Yeah, 1.27 R. You could close here if you're a 1 hour trader. Me personally, I didn't like that idea. I wanted to go for the 2 hour. I'm like, I'm watching. I'm watching. I ended up trailing my stop to here, so to that low. I think I ended up trailing after we saw this, um, and then we just kind of started. We started losing volume. Really, we got really close to my TP actually, and then I saw this. I'm like, okay, we saw how we broke through current like high of day. We broke through high of day with strength. So I'm like, we're retesting that. I want to see that hold. So I was like, okay, okay, cool. We're getting a reaction. I think at this point I was watching on the 5 minute, kind of like the 5 minute candle that we had there. But yeah, this was my trade so far. And I'm like, we could retest VWAP, we could wick it. So I did not decide to go break even. But as we were approaching VWAP, it happened with a lot of strength. At this point, I should have just trailed to this wick, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think it would have made that much of a difference. It's catching like 25 points, which I think I was on 3 micros, so it's not that much. But just thinking in terms like, what should be done, that's probably one of the good decisions. And yeah, this ended up stopping me out at break even. So I actually manually closed it as I was seeing, reading book map as how like we were retesting VWAP. I didn't want to see it like displaced through it, and that's what it did. And as soon as I saw that, I closed it. So I had to be very quick. I was like, I'm gonna be quick with this. If I'm not going break even, I gotta be quick with my exit, because I don't want to be losing money after taking a trade where I was up 76 points. My mentor would probably get on my butt for not closing this. Because at this point, after adjusting my stop, technically it's 4R. Technically, if you consider like the adjusted stop, your adjusted RR. For me, it still looked like I did not hit that 2R. But yeah, it is what it is. I'll take it. Maybe I could have just um, taken partials earlier, because I was thinking, I'll take partials at a 1 or 2, and I had an extended take profit. So like that, I was taking 2 micros at that 2R, and then the full position at like a, what was it? Was it here? I think it was here. Oh, this is the 5 minute. My bad. My bad. Yeah, it was over here. So it was like a 3.58 R, nearly a 3.6 R. Uh, I would have let the runner up to those highs because that target looked really good to me. But after this, after we've broken through high of day, we were now looking at this fib, because now this is the current New York range, and I was looking at it, and bookmap just didn't look convincing for me. It really looked to me like it was just we had a lot of buying effort at the highs. We couldn't break it. We had a few attempts where we tried to break it, and we couldn't break it. We couldn't break through it. So I'm like, interesting. We didn't even break the 45-minute IB, which I did expect to happen, but it didn't. It did end up happening later on, which I'll show you here in a second how that happened. But as we were approaching, these fib levels, I was watching the reaction. I'm like, okay, we broke through New York VWAP with strength. I'm like, the last line of defense for me is this low volume node, which I did have marked out on my chart, and you'll see how crazy the reaction was at this level once I show you the bookmap picture, which is this one right here. We barely tap into this level. Barely. Like we barely sneak a peek into it and then reverse. It was like I saw that, I'm like, wow, okay, like good for me for marking out that zone. But you could clearly see on the volume profile here, it's a low volume node. Um, to me, at this time, I'm like, if this touches near overnight VWAP, I'm taking it. Like I was not hesitating on that. And the fact that we barely got close to it. If you look at this on the 50 minute, it will look like it did um, test that level. I didn't think of it, but looking at it on the 5 minute, doesn't look like it. If you look at it on the 50 minute, though, look at that. We do tap into it, which is just interesting to me. But I trust the book map, VWAP. Excuse me. But yeah, we didn't quite tap it, and we wake out of the 618. And then after this, we get a bullish reaction. So I'm thinking, you know, this could be a good entry. And this is more like kind of like my analysis as it was happening. I'm like, I didn't take the trade. It wasn't convincing enough for me, and I'm okay with not taking it, sitting it out. As I was seeing it play out, I'm like, yep, I'm locking the account. And I'll show you here in a second how the stats are looking so far on that account. But the entry was 25, 5, 6, 1, 75, which is, we get that sell off into the low volume node, form a high, and then we break it with a body close. So that's where your entry is. Maybe you wait for a 5 minute candle close and you enter here. Either or is valid. I feel like if I took it, this is where my entry would have been. The stop loss placement for me, it makes sense to place it at 2050 because it's right below the low volume node. I think it's also like this low right here, this 5 minute low. I'd want to see that low get respected. I don't want to see it get disrespected. So yeah, we did all that. It's also covering like a below overnight VWAP, below the low volume node. And if we're breaking past that with strength, to me, it would just be like, we're breaking the 618. We're probably going to snap these lows down here. The New York Open low. But this actually ended up playing out insanely well. Like this, we got this candle. And then, honestly, the target would be just here, like IB high. This is a 2.25R. Pretty solid trade, 93 points, nearly 40 point stop, and you end up hitting TP. You could target the point one, but that doesn't give you TP. Maybe you want to target a fixed 100 point move. You could do that as well. I usually do that based on structure, or a fixed R, which is what I ended up doing on my first shade. Lesson learned. Sometimes you don't get those. But yeah, should have just taken partials at the unfilled 1 hour FEG, which is technically a resistance zone for me. Um, Another thing that was kind of weirding me out was how, like, when we had this strong sell off slash retracement. Some people see this as a retracement. As I was seeing it as a strong sell off after we had already had a lot of failed buying up here. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much the idea that I was looking at. And after that, like while that was happening, ES was selling off with a lot of strength. ES actually ended up breaking the 45-minute IB low, and after that, it ended up breaking the 1 hour IB low, which set at 10:30. So like the 10:25 low, that kind of closed us at 10:30. So that's our IB low on ES, and it was breaking it, and I'm like, this is weirding me out. So I was not convinced by the fact that we didn't touch the VWAP. We were aggressively selling off. It looked good for us to sell off because we were coming off of the resistance zone that I had marked out. And ES was showing me, like, yeah, we're selling off. I'm like, okay, I'll just wait. I'll just wait this out, watch it play out. Um, so one thing is, there's a few things with like my trading, and it's something that like I'm gonna have to see if it's something that I play by ear or not. Because I'm used to looking at both NQ and ES at the same time as I'm trading. Because I consider like SMTs, if one of them's lagging behind the other one, I'm like, okay, let's say ES is pushing higher, and NQ is kind of like stalling out a bit, consolidated, or maybe it's manipulating. I'm like, if I'm bullish, that's a good sign for me technically, because I want to see NQ catch up to what ES is doing. So yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to think of it, and ES just it's been helping. Like I feel like throughout the years, or throughout the months, it's been helping me like kind of like gauge whether or not a move looks valid to me or not, or if it looks kind of like, because in this case it weirded me out, but it ended up working, not to the IB extensions, but to the IB high. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing to read, but one takeaway that I do have from this trade is focus on your strategy, right? And focus on what it's telling you. In this case, your strategy is telling you, or my strategy in my case is telling me, we're respecting the 618. Clearly wicked it, right? So maybe you want to see a reaction after wicking it. Maybe you want to wait for a candle close, or maybe you want to wait for a break on the tick chart. You get both of those. So maybe you wait for a break on the tick chart, and you want to wait for the candle to actually um, close as a green candle. Um, so yeah, and the top loss placement, it could have even been more aggressive, right? Could have been right here for to make it a 3R. I feel like that's valid. But to me, it made sense to place it over here. That way, I would like give it breathing room. You know what I mean? So pretty interesting thing to see. Pretty interesting thing to see because my analysis was correct. I just missed out on the move, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because it'll happen. It'll happen oftentimes. So like another takeaway that I have with this specific trade is like with the VWAPs, right? If I already have multiple confluences in alignment, in this case, it would be the low volume node and the FIP level and the momentum, right? And all the fail selling we saw at that low. So it kind of validates that reaction we're getting at that FIP level, and it's like you don't really like need to like tap exactly like to the tick that VWAP, right? So that's kind of like a takeaway that I'm getting from this trade. Is like the VWAP doesn't have to be like exactly at that level. It is pretty nice when it happens. Like that first trade, we tapped perfectly into that VWAP, um, and it played out pretty nicely, right? So I guess that's one of the takeaways that I get from this trade. And the first trade, I'm fine with like taking it. Unfortunate, it was a break even trade, so like I'll actually show you guys the stats for this new account. 78 cents in profit. So it was kind of crazy. Like I closed it, I'm like, oh, 78 cents, yay! Didn't lose, but that was yeah. It was a 30-minute long trade. So pretty long trade. Only trade I've taken on this account so far. $3 in profit, but $2 in commissions. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today's trading recap. Uh, feels pretty good. Feels pretty good to, you know, it feels like being back after taking like the Thanksgiving break, fully taking that break, like just not working, um, not looking at charts and all that stuff. Feels pretty nice. Feels pretty nice to be back. Could have been a better start to December, but honestly, I'll take it. We took a good trade, ended up not hitting our final TP. I'm okay with that, and then we saw another opportunity, and we learned from it. So honestly, pretty solid start to December, and I feel like it can only get better from here. We'll just continue to put in the work, continue to do what we're supposed to do, and it'll pay off. I'm sure of it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Really appreciate it. And hopefully, I'll catch y'all on the next one with a banger trade. All right, y'all. Peace.